Welcome, everyone, to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Beccaspahr. Did I get that last name
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
It took me a while to practice. So, she is certified relational health coach, keynote speaker, and social wellness educator. She works with veterans and their families through speaking, workshops, retreats, and one on one friendship coaching. At the heart of her work is a simple belief: a connection is possible for everyone, and it's a skill you can learn. So, Becca, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
And today's a good topic, right? To me, when friendships are no longer supportive, what we could do about it. So I think that's a great topic. So before we go on, so tell us a little bit about this. So what was your journey like to become a relational health coach, speaker? You had, the podcast. What was that journey like for you?
Well, a lot of people probably wouldn't believe it by looking at me, but I spent 20 of the last 22 years on active duty in the Marine Corps. And
Oh, well,
doing
thank you for
that,
serving.
yeah, that it was it was the best thing I ever did in my life. And it got me in front of a lot of people and around a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds. And I very much, even as a kid, I really like paid attention to the way human beings behave. And I
Hmm.
think maybe in another life I might have been like like a sociologist or a psychologist or something. But fast forward 20 years through that, and when I got out, I had already done a little bit of life coaching, more like in the leadership space. But I decided that I was becoming more interested in this idea of social wellness and how
Hmm.
the ways that we're connected with people affect our well-being overall. And so I became a certified relational health coach, and I now primarily focus on veterans and their families. And so I do speaking for organizations that serve veterans, but I also do a little bit of one-on-one coaching for people, particularly in friendship. And so that's why I was really excited when I was able to connect with you and the work that you're doing to teach people about these relationships that are so important in our lives.
No, I definitely agree. And especially once COVID hit in 2019, 2020, it seems like so much of a disconnect happened
Hmm.
that I still think 6 years later, even it's happening in dating. And, so today's topic, because, if you're dating someone, first you start off with friends and hopefully it grows into a relationship. But I've been to with some relationships with friends where a betrayal happens. And in my mind, once that happens, I'm still friends. I'm still hi, how you doing? But I keep my distance. In other
Hmm.
words, whether I'm going to hang out with them or her or whoever, that's probably not going to happen because I felt the hurt.
Hmm.
In your work, is that something that happens often? Maybe about forgiveness, about a relationship. And I've been in two situations where someone hurt me, but because I knew them for 30 years, I did let it go. But something that's
Hmm.
much newer, I pretty much have no tolerance for it, and then I move on. But um, let's go back with COVID. Did that happen more often where just people because they just became isolated because of what was happening at that time? Does my question make sense at all?
Yeah, well, COVID is like such an anomaly, right? In
Yes.
our lifetimes, there has not been something like that, comparable to that. And it truly and deeply affected the way that people relate to each other. One, because it was just harder to be able to be around the people who, you loved and wanted to be around. But then also a lot of our interactions shifted to being virtual.
Hmm.
And then that, has its whole a whole slew of complications. In some
Yeah.
ways, it makes people more connected because maybe there are people who you want in your life, but they don't live near you. But now we have, Zoom and FaceTime and social media where we can be interacting, whereas, 20, 25 years ago, that wasn't happening at all. But then in some ways it made things less personal, and maybe there's a little bit more room for misunderstandings. Like if you're communicating solely via text, you lose some of that face to face, and maybe, that can cause problems. So, yeah, COVID had a huge impact on just about everybody, and has really shaped the way that we have relationships, whether they're friendships or they're more like romantic relationships.
Yeah, I just feel that it's such a disconnect over the last 5, 6 years because of what happened with COVID, but also too, how has social media come into play, right? Because everything is now through text. Um,
Yeah.
even when you meet new people, whether you're in your 20s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, everything now is, well, here's my Facebook profile, or can I get your
Hmm.
Instagram profile? It seems like the art of communication, the phone call is become. I hate to say it seems like it's becoming a lost art. Everything is now through text. How can you build up a friendship that way?
Yeah, well, I mean, so many things have changed. People don't kids don't learn how to write in cursive anymore, so like
Mm,
how are they, it's just all these little things that have happened. People text more than they call, or we're using email or we're relying on other types of technology to stay plugged in with people. But what I'm seeing is a trend where people are starting to realize this. And
mhm.
they understand that even though it's convenient usually to communicate in those ways using technology, it often isn't the most fulfilling because we're not
Right.
having face-to-face interaction. We're not getting out of the house. We're not in places where we could be making even more connections because we're not like out in public. And so the trend that I see is that people are starting to be more intentional about the way that they maintain their friendships or like find friendships. So when I have clients who come to me with questions like this, we usually walk through kind of a series of questions that go through, first of all, what do they want in a friendship? So that they're thinking about the type of person they want to meet, how often they would want to see them or interact with them, what they want their friendship for. Is it because you need somebody to vent to, or is it because you want somebody to go on hikes with, that kind of thing. So we
Right.
think through that, and then we think, okay, well, where are we going to find people like this? If you want a hiking buddy, going to a hiking group is probably a good place to start because you're going to find somebody with those similar interests. Um, and then designing together, kind of coming up with ideas as to how we can meet whatever that goal is for the friendship. So maybe it's talking to one new person this week, or reaching out to someone who's already kind of a friend, like on the fringes, like you sort of know them but they're not really friends yet, but reaching
Right.
out and then inviting them or saying, hey, can I get your opinion on this, and sort of inviting that friendship in and then seeing where it goes.
I know that's important. One of the things about today's topic is when a friend's no longer supportive. And I had that a couple of times where I had people, when I wanted to reach for certain goals, and then some of my friends, or a couple of my friends, not a lot, but a couple, would say, "Hey, I wouldn't do that if I were you," or "Well, I don't think that. I think that's going to fail," or "Have you tried it?" And they 9 out of 10 times, they're like, "No, but I know people that have."
Yeah,
Um, in that situation, you feel let down, because you want the support
definitely.
of your friends, and then you don't get that. How can you move from that, especially someone that you might know for a little while, but
Yeah.
you realize, wow, they're not supporting me anymore. I feel
Yeah.
like they're battling against me, for me progressing to become a better person, a better human, better man.
Yeah. Well, the first step, which is what you described, is that you have to identify that that's what's happening. Because it's
Mhm.
not always like this big blow up fight. It might just be a lack of consistent support, like what you said, or they constantly break plans, so they're no longer reliable to you, or maybe they're taking up all the emotional energy in the relationship because all they want is to dump their problems on you, but they don't actually want to receive from you. So there are a lot of reasons why a friendship might get to a point of that there's some kind of conflict. So being aware, like you said, being aware of it is the first step. There's some kind of conflict. This isn't going the way that I want it. I'm not getting what I want and need out of this relationship. And then once you've identified that, you have to make a decision. And usually what that looks through, like the options that you could have are that you just kind of do nothing. It may fizzle out and just you just sort of stop talking to each other, or you see each other on occasion and you're civil, but there aren't, like you're not trying to be friends with them actively anymore. The other thing is if you decide you want to try to save the friendship, is that you have a conversation with them. And that could be, I should say, you communicate that to them. So it could be a face-to-face conversation, it could be a text, it could be a phone call, it could be a letter or an email, and you have to think through what is probably going to be the most effective way to communicate with this person and tell them what it is that bothered you. And then either say, that that upset me, but I value your friendship and I want to stay friends, so how can we fix this?
Mhm.
Or that hurt me enough that i'm I'm not going to be able to be in your life anymore, and that's where you set a boundary and hold that boundary that you don't want to be friends anymore. And it's tough,
I
but sometimes you
yeah
have to do it.
yeah, and boundaries. I love that phrase or word, boundaries. And you hit on something earlier, because I've had a couple of friends that would call me and then just dump all their bad karma on me,
Hmm.
and then it felt like a throwaway question. Oh, how are you? Otherwise, how are you? It
Oh,
didn't feel
right.
sincere. Does that make sense? And so to me, that wasn't a supportive
Yeah,
friend. I was their supportive friend, but it wasn't vice versa. So when I noticed that, I just would listen
right.
and I wouldn't even say anything. Oh, how you doing? Oh, good. And I would just bring it back to them because it felt like it was all about them. Needless to say, I'm not friends with that person anymore. But
Hmm.
it's you want to get hurt too as you're supposed to be friends, but it was such a one-way street. Again,
Hmm.
in your practice and you know people you talk to, how do you deal with that when seems like it's a one-way street? You talk about support.
Well,
There was no support.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, that's really common. And so just, we're all human beings here and we all have needs. And then even within our relationships with other humans, there are needs. So the framework that I use to think of like what our needs in a friendship are is I call it the four E's. So that
Mhm.
is equality, enjoyment, empathy, and effort. And the so when I'm working with a client and I'm kind of getting to the bottom of what the problem is, it always lands in one of those needs isn't happening, or it's not happening enough that it's satisfying. So
Mhm.
in the case of what you're talking about here with the support, that would be that there's a problem with the equality factor.
Right.
So you're not feeling supported, there isn't that balance in terms of like sharing the amount of time that you're talking or the amount of emotion that you're laying on each other. You feel like an afterthought. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Um, or then also you feel like maybe you can't trust them. A lack of like respect and trust would also create an inequality that would be very damaging to a relationship.
Yeah, and it felt that way. Again, I didn't mind talking to this person, but like I said, it was just dumping, dumping,
Hmm.
dumping. She had a
Hmm.
bad day. Let me call Will and all that. But like I said, it took a while, but I just started noticing the patterns. And like I said, slowly but surely, I just kept my distance till one day the phone call stopped and all that. Um,
Yeah.
and I think in dating, um, it seems that people don't become friends anymore. What I've seen in modern dating, and what I call modern dating is pretty much post after COVID.
Hmm.
Because I've talked to a few of my friends that are, in their 20s and early 30s. They feel that there is no friendship. Nobody's getting to know each other. Some people are moving fast and want to get into a relationship without knowing someone. And I know I did that without when I was younger. And then I realized within a couple of weeks there's no chemistry or we had nothing in common. Have you
Hmm.
noticed that too? Whether it's in the dating sphere or just in terms of regular relationship, it seems like people are not getting to know each other that much anymore.
Yeah, well, I think
Or am I just
collectively,
Yeah, sorry,
No,
Becca.
well,
I'm just saying, am I like in the ballpark with that? Because that's
yeah,
what I
yeah, yeah,
see and feeling, from watching other, the news and other
yeah.
podcasters and reading articles.
No, those are really good, solid observations. And a lot of it, so I think, kind of the root issue here is that because of all this technology and information that is always at our disposal, we have become very impatient. And so we want everything to happen quickly. We want it when we want it. And I mean, you don't even have to like go to the grocery store and find your food anymore. Like it can just appear on your doorstep, you know. There's
True.
all these conveniences of modern life that make things happen fast. And dating and friendship, that has also kind of invaded in that, so we have these dating apps and there's also friendship apps that exist.
Mhm.
Well, you can look at someone's profile and that subtracts the first like 10 dates because I didn't have to ask you if you like dogs or cats more. It's right there in your profile. I don't have to ask you what your job is and then listen to your response about it. I don't have to ask you whether you have brothers or sisters or whatever, it's all in the profile. So we're looking
Mhm.
at this very watered down profile. Like, here's the 10 most important bullet points about me. Decide whether you like me or not. Decide whether or not you want to go on a date
Uh,
with me. So it's like hitting fast forward, but by hitting fast forward, although it's convenient, you're missing all of that really beautiful time that you're to share with someone who you may eventually fall in love with or
yeah.
become best friends with, and you're not getting those conversations over dinner and the little smiles and the telling, you can tell what really lights a person up when they get really animated about something, or maybe something kind of upsets them because they're talking about, I don't know, some family thing that's bothers them, and then you can tell by the expression on their face. You're missing all of those nonverbal communication cues, pheromones, the little it's called back channeling. So it's like the little
Mhm.
gestures that we do and noises that we make when we're paying attention to what someone's saying. So it's like nodding your head or making eye contact or saying, uh-huh. It's just a series of what seem like very, very small, just minute little details when you're getting to know someone, but they lay a foundation for whether you trust them, whether you think they're a warm person, whether you could see a future with that person, because we're just going off the profiles and we're just hitting fast forward. And it's, I think, detrimental to it. It does not make for strong relationships that have that basis from the beginning.
Yeah. No, no, I definitely agree. So, what would you suggest for someone, whether they're in their 20s up to their 50s, 60s, to cultivate a friendship, at least at the beginning?
Mhm.
Joining clubs, or
Yeah.
what would be a couple of suggestions, if you don't mind?
Yeah, that's a good one to start. Well, first of all, kind of do like a self kind of checklist, check in with yourself and think.
Hmm.
I think that people do this with dating more. They can kind of think of who their ideal partner is. Like, oh, well, I
Yeah.
want I want him to be around this age. I want them to live in this area. I want them to have these things in common with me. But people very rarely do that for friends.
Yeah.
And part of that,
Right.
without
That's true.
going on
There's
a
no
soapbox, part of
restrictions.
that is because
Yeah.
and some of it comes from when we're very young, when we're children making friends in school. It's just whoever is around you is your friend, right? Like you go to second grade with the same people day in and day out. Some of them are going to become your friends, and it doesn't really matter at that point how much you have in common. But as you mature and you start to know yourself better and you know the things that are really your interests, that becomes a little bit more important. So step one is put a little bit of time into thinking about who your ideal friend is, and then think through how can you find that person. So some good ways to do that I suggest. You can do the friendship apps. I don't love them. Volunteering is a great way to meet people. As long as you're finding things, you're not volunteering just by yourself. You want to find something that's like there will be other people there.
Yeah.
Um, Going to the same places consistently will allow you to
Hmm.
like run into people. So maybe you go to the gym and you're at the gym every day from 7 to 8. You're going to eventually start seeing the same people. And then maybe at some point you strike up a conversation, and that could potentially lead to a friendship. Or maybe it's like a club, like a book club or a hiking club or a knitting club, whatever. Those are going to put you in places where people have at least one similar interest to you. Another
Mm.
place would be any kind of like a community or even a spiritual group. So going to church or temple, going to, there's community groups like, there's all kinds of them, but like, Rotary or like a networking group, or, I do a lot of work with veterans. So I encourage people to join like the American Legion or Veterans of Foreign Wars. So there are still places like that exist, that would also be environments where you could potentially meet friends.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I love those suggestions. Well, first of all, Becca, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating. This was to me eye opening. Before I let you go, anything else you want to promote? You want to talk about your podcast? Anything else?
Oh, thanks. That's so generous of you. Yeah, well, I mean, you can check out if you're interested in learning more about my work. My website is my name, Beccaspahr.com. I do primarily speaking for organizations
Hmm.
that serve veterans generally, but I also more broadly speak on social wellness and why it's important to our overall health. And then, yeah, and I'm on social media too. If you just search my name, I do a lot of videos. I try to do at least one a week. To give people some little snippets about how they can connect with people and what kind of issues they might find in friendships and how to get back to a better place with those.
Okay, and if and tell us that website one more time where people can find you.
Okay, it's Beccaspahr.com. It's Beccaspahr.com.
Yeah, I'll definitely put that on the show notes. And before I let you go, one last word about connection and friendship.
Connection is for everyone, and it is a skill that you can learn. It seems really intimidating, especially to people who think, oh, well, I'm an introvert. I just want to stay home. We all want to stay home sometimes. And just like getting off the couch and going to the gym or doing something meditative that's going to help you manage your stress or getting enough sleep, it's something